A sudden, heartfelt confession appears before him, followed by another, far more confident and alluring, and another bursting with pure, unbridled joy. Even the most stoic woman admits her feelings flustered. A playful girl with a band-aid joins the chorus. A pop star's declaration, loud and clear for all to hear. Then a shy whisper from a girl with silver hair. And a trio of redheads in perfect, synchronized adoration. Well, someone's clearly having a very good dream. Because that's all this is. A fleeting, dreamlike story. But the dream fades and reality sets in with a rumor. A whisper spreads about a secret disciple trained by Sunjin. And apparently that very disciple has just arrived. The entire room buzzes with questions and speculation. To understand this, we rewind the clock half a year. Back to his seemingly normal life in Seoul, South Korea. Even then, he was the subject of hushed conversations. Meet young Soyu, a high school student walking with confidence. He believed himself to be anything but ordinary, soaking in what he felt was the gaze of a celebrity. His striking features are the talk of the school. But there's another side to his reputation. He's an academic powerhouse, accepting an award with a smug grin. His peers, however, see only his arrogance, and his talent extends to the basketball court, where he sinks another perfect shot. Of course, he celebrates with all the grace of a sore winner. He'll even throw his own teammate under the bus for the spotlight. It's a lonely existence for a boy like him, watched by everyone but close to no one. He's surrounded by classmates, but not in a good way. A boy known for his sharp, cutting words, earning him the fitting nickname Satan's Tongue. Onlookers can only comment on the chaos, yet despite his cruelty, he draws a crowd. A strange charisma that makes him hard to hate. But young Soyu's real secret is something else entirely. He's suddenly confronted by his alternate self. This other him is older, colder, and far more dangerous. And young Soyu is, understandably, at a loss for words. The older young Soyu begins to tell a story of a dream that began with monks from another world, a shared memory he's recreated for them both. The figures in the dream turn their heads. He was to be trained by 10 of them, a training that started without his permission, as they chased him through his own mind. Every night the lessons were beaten into him, a brutal regimen that left him spinning. Because apparently, dream drowning builds character. The pain is real, even if his trainer says it's just a dream. His older self calmly recounts even more gruesome experiences. The mental toll of the training was enough to break him. He'd wake every morning dazed and exhausted. Even his mother noticed the vacant look in his eyes. This cycle continued until the day before high school graduation. His masters finally deemed him ready for the next step. Their world. But back in reality, a classmate is being called out. And in the dream, the monk points, choosing someone for a debut. He's choosing young Soyu's friend. Back in reality, young Soyu walks with his friend. The only one who knows about his nightly training. He asks his friend what it means to be taken to another world. His friend, however, seems completely unfazed. He bluntly asks if young Soyu is done with his delusions. But then he humors him, wondering how he'd even get there. Just then, a truck speeds dangerously close. His friend's mind races through all the classic isekai tropes. Young Soyu instinctively shields his head, clearly rattled. But in the end, he dismisses it all as just a dream. For young Soyu, everything has felt like a dream. A story that simply ended the moment he woke up. And now, the day of his high school graduation has arrived. A ceremony marking the end of one chapter. But his mind drifts back to the dreams that weren't so pleasant. He accepts his diploma with that same familiar, arrogant smile, remembering the pain inflicted by his so-called masters, especially one monk named Sunjin, a master of verbal abuse, a man who clearly had more than a few screws loose. But in this moment, he's just a son, posing for his mother's camera. A memory surfaces from his time in that other world. A gentle hand places a flower behind his ear. The gesture comes from a woman with a sword at her side. She simply says she liked the way it looked. A rare moment of kindness that leaves him flustered. But not all his companions were so kind, as a hooded figure threatens violence, sparking a chaotic argument among the group. One of his masters tells another student to look away, while another comments on the annoying chatter of ugly people. And Yang Soyu, never one to be left out, fires back with his own taunts. The memory shifts to a moment of pure chaos, as a sudden, violent force tears through the clearing. One of their own is instantly bound by living roots, only to be taunted by a fluffy, nightmarish creature. He remembers the other lessons, each one uniquely brutal. Like having your very thoughts forcibly extracted, or being used as bait in some twisted demonic game. The violence was constant and often without reason. Yet, he reflects, they were strangely hard to hate. And with that thought, he prepares for another night of training. He drifts off to sleep, a peaceful expression on his face. His mother's voice calls out to him, but he's already gone. He's embarking on a journey that might just be another dream. But as he enters the familiar void, he wonders if this time it's real. He stands before one of his masters, questioning if they'll even remember him. The monk extends a hand, and Yang Soyu's mind races with what to say. Of course, his first thought is how to immediately assert dominance. He considers a simple greeting, but that feels far too weak. He's already planning his dramatic entrance before he's even arrived. His thoughts blur as he's pulled into the light, still searching for the perfect line. He cycles through a few standard greetings, but his mind flashes back to his first awkward encounters, to the constant bickering and casual violence, and the bizarre lessons that never made any sense. He remembers being dragged into their antics against his will and getting beaten for the slightest mistake. It was a constant, chaotic free-for-all. A group of absolute idiots, he thinks fondly. And with that, Yang Soyu's journey truly begins. His eyes snap open to a brand new world. He arrives with a choked gasp, collapsing to his knees in the sudden downpour. The air feels thick, heavy, and impossible to breathe. But he forces himself to focus, to push through the shock. The world around him is a gray, rainy blur. He slowly rises, questioning the sudden change in weather. But the puddle at his feet isn't filled with rainwater. A cold dread begins to creep in as he looks around. He sees the dark red stains spreading across the ground, and in the distance a grim scene awaits him. Through the downpour, he sees a flash of light and a fallen figure. Yang Soyu stares in disbelief at the carnage around him. Bodies are strewn across the ruined landscape. The rain can't wash away the evidence of the battle. He sees his companions, broken and defeated. This wasn't the grand entrance he had planned. He can barely form a coherent thought. A familiar voice screams his name, snapping him out of his horrified trance. One of his masters orders him to look up. The master's voice rings out, a desperate command. Yang Soyu's gaze follows the order, lifting to the sky. And he sees the source of all this destruction. The dragon he was brought here to defeat, a vision of pure, unbridled fury. But the memory cuts away. Returning to the present day, the room is still buzzing with talk of Sungjin's disciple, a legendary student said to be the strongest in the monastery's history. And the crowd can only guess at who this person could be. Some are on their third attempt, a testament to sheer optimism. But then, the crowd's gaze lands on a single unassuming figure. We return to Yang Soyu's story as he fills in the missing pieces. This new world, he explains, is a twisted mirror of his own. The main difference lies with the people who inhabit it. Here, the fantasies of his world are simply reality. A reality built on the foundation of supernatural skills. It was a concept that seemed like a childish daydream at first, but he learned that talent for these skills is innate. And one man, Sungjin, possessed a power that was truly rare. Sungjin explains that he's come to find his otherworld counterpart. He states that one soul can only possess a single skill, and he intends to make Yang Soyu into the next Sungjin. The two of them seem to be seriously considering the offer. But Yang Soyu, ever the pragmatist, questions why he was chosen. The answer is simple. He's a backup battery, an insult that our boy for some reason finds hysterical. He's then promptly sent flying for his amusement. As Sungjin proudly announces his dream crossing skill, a power that will allow him to visit Yang Soyu every single night. And just like that, he's pulled back into the memory. His master's voice screams out a desperate command, forcing Yang Soyu to look up in terror. The monk presents the brutalized head of a creature, announcing that its master, the dragon, is now Yang Soyu's enemy. The memory then flashes back to the source of the destruction, a blast of energy that sent everyone flying, an impact that tore through the very fabric of the city. A familiar bridge in Seoul is ripped in half. The sky darkens over the impossible scene. Yang Soyu stands alone on the ruined highway. He tries to catch his breath, sweat and fear on his face. He looks up just as the enemy vanishes into the clouds. The monk confirms the dragon has retreated to the sky, fleeing to a place where they cannot possibly follow. For a moment, it seems the battle is finally over. A quiet stillness hangs over the devastated city, but a weak voice calls out to Sungjin from the rubble. He turns to find one of his comrades fallen. The monk stares in horror, realizing the man is already gone. The dying man's last words are a desperate plea. Yang Soyu can only watch from the ruined bridge. The man seems content with his sacrifice, believing it was worth it to create a backup battery. The words hit Yang Soyu with a horrifying new weight. He struggles to understand the true meaning. The memory of the fallen man flashes in his mind, followed by another of his companions lost in the chaos. The faces of all his masters blur together in his panic, and the weight of their sacrifice settles upon him. He can only ask what's happening, his mind reeling. The story shifts to that same night at the Chiongan monastery. Inside, Sungjin explains the situation to a small, masked figure. The figure reveals the dragon fell into heresy 3 years ago, becoming what their world calls an error, a harmful existence, a corruption that was finally made complete on this day. He recounts how the 9 masters were the monastery's strongest warriors, but their numbers have been dwindling. One fell 2 years prior. Another was lost just last year, and 2 more were lost in the battle that very day. And now, only 5 of the original 9 masters remain, with Sungjin himself rendered useless for the time being. Yang Soyu can only listen, the weight of the situation crashing down. The masked figure explains that if the dragon isn't stopped, the world is doomed. The Cheongsan monastery will take on this task, but they need a strong monk, and he looks directly at Yang Soyu, offering him a place among them. The deal is simple. Help them catch the dragon, and they'll send him home. Elsewhere, other monks discuss the meeting with the Sungjin of another world. The small monk calls out his name, demanding an answer, and Yang Soyu is left speechless by the impossible choice before him. Yang Soyu is left to process the impossible choice. He turns to the masked figure, stammering. His mind is stuck on one horrifying detail. The dragon was someone he knew, someone he looked up to. A memory surfaces of a much younger Yang Soyu, calling out to the serene, blue-haired man. He remembers asking about a ridiculous Christmas cosplay rumor, a rumor that involved pulling a sleigh for another master. The teasing escalates, leaving the man completely flustered. It was a simpler time, filled with harmless taunts. A man who couldn't even handle his alcohol, getting flustered after just a few drinks, a fond memory of his friends teasing him relentlessly. But that gentleman is the same one who killed everyone. The masked figure confirms his worst fears with a single word. He asks Yang Soyu to get stronger and help them catch the dragon. The story returns to the present, where the rumors are getting vicious. The crowd questions why Sungjin's disciple is only now appearing. They speculate that maybe he's just incompetent, or perhaps he was simply a disappointing failure. The gossip continues, painting the disciple as pathetic and ugly, but a voice cuts through the noise, claiming the title for himself. He declares that he is Sungjin's one and only disciple, and his name, he proudly announces, is Yang Soyu. He then turns to the crowd, promising to take first place. His expression is a familiar mix of arrogance and resolve. An announcement rings out, signaling the start of the test. The other hopefuls can only stare in stunned confusion. Someone tries to explain that he can't pass on the first day. The doubt in the room is palpable as they question his claim. But Yang Soyu is already back to his old tricks, verbally dissecting a stranger. The onlookers wonder if this is really Sungjin's legendary disciple.
He continues his unsolicited lecture on social etiquette.
A masterclass in how to make enemies and alienate people. A red-haired woman in the crowd looks on, completely unimpressed. She tells him to get his act together, cutting through his monologue. The scene shifts, explaining a past event from 6 years ago, when a special task force of 9 members was formed, a team that gained immense fame by hunting a single powerful error. Now, a rumor spreads that this legendary team is being reformed. The crowd discusses the task force, a path to guaranteed wealth and fame. Because of this, the number of applicants has swelled to 10 times the usual. But among the hundreds of hopefuls, one name is on everyone's mind. The red-haired woman from before sees an opportunity, telling her friend to stay alert. Her plan is to stick close to the powerful and pick up the scraps. And with that, the entire room begins to press in on Yang Soyu. We flash back to 6 months ago, when Yang Soyu first arrived in this world. He recalls his initial resistance and his eventual decision to follow the master's advice. His immediate goal was simple: officially join the Cheongsan monastery, and now, with a deep breath, he prepares for the challenge ahead. His goal is clear: catch the dragon and return home. An announcement confirms everyone has passed the initial screening. A silver-haired proctor explains the 4 practical tests ahead. The first is a test of potential, a yearly tradition. The second will measure their practical adaptability. The third is a secret test of their character, and the final stage will be a simple interview. The candidates are then herded onto a large, gridded field. The red-haired woman suddenly approaches Yang Soyu. She connects the dots, realizing he must be Sungjin's legendary disciple. She challenges him directly, asking how many flowers he can bloom. Yang Soyu simply looks up, a bit confused by the question. The scene shifts to an explanation of the first practical test. It's a yearly tradition called blooming flowers to measure potential. A flashback reminds him that this power is based on natural talent. A special branch blooms with flowers in response to the user's energy. The proctor explains that 2 results from this test became legendary. The first legend bloomed only a few flowers, but they lasted for days. A tiny, elderly monk proudly takes credit for that particular achievement. And the other legend, he reveals, was none other than Sunjin. The proctor suggests Yang Soyu might even match his master's record. He's eager to witness the results for himself. Meanwhile, high-ranking monks observe from a bridge above. The crowd buzzes, realizing Master Yukguan is personally watching. The legendary monk himself looks on with a serious expression. Down on the field, the candidates prepare for the test. Yang Soyu takes his position, ready to begin. He admits he's never actually tried this before, and is curious himself. As a demonstration begins, energy flows into the branch, and in response, glowing flowers burst into life. The first candidate's branch begins to bloom with a few glowing flowers. Others strain, trying to produce even a single blossom. Some even seem to be losing their flowers as they struggle. But then, a few of the candidates notice something strange. A look of confusion spreads through the crowd. Their expressions shift from confusion to utter disbelief. They can only stare, stammering that it's impossible. Outside the monastery walls, a couple walking their dog looks up. They comment on the Cheongsan entrance test happening that day, a test known to all as blooming flowers. The woman recalls the legend of Sungjin's own test, a story she found hard to believe at first. She explains that the test usually starts with a small bouquet, which then grows into a tree the size of an umbrella. But Sungjin's was so massive it could be seen from outside the walls, just like the spectacle currently unfolding before them. The couple watches on, assuming it's just another test, until their expressions shift to pure, unadulterated shock. Because back on the field, a single, impossibly large tree of light has erupted. Leaving every other candidate completely speechless, the story flashes back to the day a certain genius took this very test. A day when the entire field bloomed with jade-colored flowers like a rippling sea, earning the young Sungjin the title Master of the Azure Sea. The onlookers could only stare in absolute awe. They struggled to find the words to describe the sight, a vast, endless sea of blue light. But in the present, Yang Soyu is having a slightly different experience. He screams, asking when the test will finally end. He even compares the endless blooming to cockroaches breeding. The proctor begs him to just hold on until the count is finished. The proctor can only stare at the endless sea of light. Yang Soyu rolls up his sleeve, asking if they really need to count them all. The other candidates are left in a state of utter shock, but our boy just grins, relishing the moment. The proctor finally calls an end to the first test. Yang Soyu stands proudly, reminding a certain someone he'd be first. Elsewhere, former candidates recall their own modest results. Later, Yang Soyu takes a moment to relax on a park bench. But his peace is interrupted by a surprising sight. He marvels at the monastery's prime real estate, right in the city center. A voice calls out to him from behind. It's the red-haired woman, admitting she was surprised by his display. She asks if she can join him on the bench. They sit together as she asks if the flower count is finished yet. She proudly announces her own impressive score of 620 flowers. Yang Soyu questions her attempt to brag in front of him, leaving her speechless. She quickly backpedals, showering him with praise for his own achievement. He soaks it all in, accepting her compliments with his usual smugness. But then he critiques her repetitive phrasing, much to her disbelief. She can only wonder if he's even capable of humility. He, however, seems completely unbothered by her internal monologue. She admits that his relaxed attitude doesn't exactly scream legendary disciple, but she can't deny the overwhelming power she just witnessed. She decides his potential is too great to ignore. If only his vacant, slightly unhinged expression was more trustworthy. But then he turns to her with a sudden, knowing smile. The unexpected attention leaves her completely flustered. He stands up abruptly, and she can only marvel at his confidence. He leans in, explaining that he's just noticed something interesting. And that something, he implies with a sly grin, is her. He offers her a simple way to pass the second test. She immediately wants to know what he means. All she has to do, he says with a grin, is follow his lead, an offer that leaves her both suspicious and intrigued. Just then, an announcement signals the start of the next phase. The silver-haired proctor explains this is a test of adaptability, but before they begin, he must introduce the examiner. The legendary scarecrow sorcerer, Aang, steps forward. The crowd erupts in a wave of shock and disbelief. A high-level monk, rarely seen in public, is here for a simple test. The crowd realizes they're recruiting for the new task force, a move that confirms everyone's wildest hopes. The examiner, Aang, introduces herself with a gentle smile. Her skill, she explains, is Clone Scarecrow, a power that allows her to control things using straw dolls. The test is simple. Find and retrieve the dolls hidden on site. She assures them it's an easy task for any skilled candidate. The candidates are completely charmed by her kind, grandmotherly act, but her expression twists, revealing she's cloned a dangerous error. And just like that, the entire crowd goes completely blank. The error in question is a seemingly ordinary bird, which achieves supersonic speeds when it finds a mate. This particular version is called the Love bird, and it's a creature that gives even skilled monks a hard time. The candidates can only despair at the impossible difficulty. Aang explains the rules: 3 hours to catch just one of her clones. She asks with a taunting smile if it sounds easy enough. The entire group collectively panics. Then she adds one more small, terrifying detail. If these birds so much as graze them, their skin will tear like paper. One candidate screams that the sheer embarrassment is the worst part. Aang cackles with delight at their collective terror. With a wicked smile, she announces the test will now begin. She holds up a small, glowing red object, a tiny spark of energy pulsing in her hand, and with a flash, she sends it flying into the air. But before anyone can even react, Yang Soyu calmly holds up a doll. The other candidates can only stare in utter disbelief. Even Aang is caught completely off guard by the sudden result. Yang Soyu just grins, as others around him realize they're holding dolls too. Aang asks for a count of those who've succeeded. A surprising number of candidates step forward, all holding dolls. She inspects the collected pile with a thoughtful hum, and with a smile, she declares that they've all passed the test. The remaining candidates are stunned by the sudden announcement. She then turns to the rest, urging them to start the actual test. She points to the sky where the sonic booms of the birds can be heard. The others hesitate, still processing the chaos. Her kind demeanor vanishes as she screams at them to move. And with that, the rest of the group finally scrambles into action. The red-haired woman and others can't believe his plan worked. She lets out a long, exhausted sigh of relief. But that relief quickly turns to irritation. Gratitude, it seems, is not her strong suit. He explains the system was based on merit from the first test. He then reveals how he figured out the second one. Pointing her toward a small island in the middle of a lake, she squints, noticing a flash of red among the branches. It's one of Aang's dolls, tied to a tree with red string. A hint that Yang Soyu had noticed from the very beginning. He cheerfully tells her to go and retrieve it. She questions why she has to cross the pond, and he simply says it's because he doesn't want to. She argues back, but Yang Soyu just shrugs, completely unconcerned. The red-haired woman stares nervously at the island across the water. She can't believe that this was the hint for the second test. She debates with herself, wondering if she can really trust him. While Yang Soyu yawns, she finally makes her decision, fueled by pure frustration. She steps into the water, assuming it's shallow, only to immediately slip and fall in, much to Yang Soyu's amusement. He mockingly compliments her swimming, glad he picked the right person for the job. She finally retrieves the doll from the tree, clearly annoyed. She examines the strange, red, talisman-like object in her hand. Returning to the bench, she demands an explanation for the markings. Yang Soyu begins a lecture, quoting one of his masters. He recalls a lesson about knowledge being the ultimate weapon, a memory of one of his hooded teachers, surrounded by books. He explains that the markings are a special kind of writing, a technique that goes against the natural order to create an error, a realization that shocks the red-haired woman. Yang Soyu grins, confirming that the doll is a tool for recreating them. He lays it all out for her, the doll, the talisman, the error. The realization finally dawns on her, much to his satisfaction. She eagerly asks for more, but he's in full lecture mode now. He reveals the writing on the talisman names the Love bird, meaning the doll itself was the key to passing the test. And with that, she finally understands the entire trick. But just as she gets it, Yang Soyu decides he's done socializing. She calls out after him, annoyed by his sudden departure. Her frustration quickly turns to confusion. As he leaps over the park benches with surprising agility, he leaps into the air with the doll she just retrieved, soaring away with an almost weightless grace. The red-haired woman can only stare in disbelief. She recognizes the move as an advanced martial arts technique. Yang Soyu glances back with a smug, knowing grin. He thanks her for the help and tells her to go find another one. She furiously demands he return the doll she worked for, but he's already moved on, giving her unsolicited advice about her studies. He waves a cheerful goodbye, leaving her to fend for herself, and cackles with the pure, unadulterated joy of a true villain. The other candidates can only scream in frustration. She realizes he could have done it himself the entire time. She fumes, cursing the so-called disciple of Sunjin, and now she understands his terrible personality perfectly. Meanwhile, Aang counts the 15 who managed to pass. As a first-time examiner, she wonders if that's a good number. The scene shifts to explain the different types of monks, some skilled in combat, while others rely on knowledge and strategy. The second test was designed to give both types a chance to shine, allowing them to showcase their unique strengths. Aung reflects that the best monks possess both strength and wit. She believes these 15 candidates will become capable monks, but her gaze sharpens with a greater purpose in mind, hoping that one of them has the talent to finally catch the dragon. With that, she officially concludes the second test. The scene then shifts to the third test, a brutal, chaotic brawl, where candidates are pitted against each other in a violent free-for-all. It's a desperate struggle for survival, with no holds barred. From a viewing platform above, two figures watch the proceedings. One of them, Master Yukwan, seems thoroughly unimpressed. His companion, a silver-haired man, explains the skill at play. He notes that if it weren't used for such a crude purpose, it would be impressive. He uses the example of a party, where a simple suggestion can control the crowd. He reveals that the candidates were hypnotized by the proctor's voice all day, and the moment they signed the contract, the skill was fully activated. They were shown a horrifying illusion of a terrified, bloodied child. A single command was then issued, forcing them to attack. The candidates lash out, screaming apologies as they strike each other. They're trapped in a nightmare, their bodies no longer their own. Each blow is followed by a desperate, horrified plea for forgiveness. A woman strikes down in horror, her face a mask of conflict. Another candidate stands in the shadows, a small blade in his hand, but he lets the weapon fall from his grasp. Master Yukwan notes that some feel guilt, but still perform their duty, while others, he continues, choose to lay down their arms. He explains that the monastery respects these very human decisions, but not everyone is so conflicted as one man attacks with glee. He pummels the dummy, desperate to pass the test. A proctor calmly informs him that he's failed. The silver-haired man smiles, suggesting they are the real stars of the show. But young Soyu is having a full-blown moral crisis. He questions his own humanity after attacking the illusion, declaring this an insult to his very refined human rights. He even threatens to report the monks for mental abuse. The observers, however, find his outburst rather telling. Master Yukwan explains that fighting errors is never a pleasant task. It's a path that requires a righteous heart, a noble spirit that pushes ever forward. The qualities that define a truly strong monk, and only to such a person will Cheongsan's doors open. But from the viewing platform, one candidate has clearly caught their attention. The silver-haired man confirms his observation with a knowing look. He notes that there is indeed a very interesting person among the group. As night falls over the monastery, the day's trials finally come to an end, and a final command erases the memory of the third test from their minds. The test concludes, leaving young Soyu with a vague, unpleasant feeling. The other candidates are just relieved that only the interview is left. They discuss how the final score gives everyone a chance to pass, but no one can seem to remember what the third test even was. They can only buzz about the fact that Master Yukwan himself was watching. Yang Soyu listens in, his expression completely unimpressed. The crowd is still buzzing about the legendary Master Yukwan, but Yang Soyu remains thoroughly unmoved by the hype. They marvel at the appearance of Aung, the high-level examiner. Our boy, however, is clearly a tough critic to please. And then there's Do-yeon, the monastery's resident pretty boy. Yang Soyu scoffs at the fawning crowd until he hears his master's name. He stops in his tracks, trying to place the name being called. His ears perk up as he realizes they're talking about him, but his attention is immediately stolen by someone far more interesting. The other candidates are completely captivated by a beautiful woman, but the story shifts, following a different figure to a towering skyscraper. Inside, the monastery's pretty boy, Do-hyun, walks with a familiar monk. They pause for a moment, admiring the art on the walls. Do-yeon then leads the monk down a private corridor. He grips the door frame, preparing to enter, and announces his return with a cheerful smile. Inside, a bizarre family dinner is already in progress. His surviving masters are gathered around the table, waiting. As one of them, with a flower for a head, tends to the grill, the silver-haired woman immediately scolds Do-yeon for being late. As the meat sizzles on the grill, the chaotic family dinner continues with more demands. The flower-headed master carefully cuts the meat. One of them pours a drink for a tiny, childlike monk, despite the next day's test. The meal is clearly the priority here. Drinks are mixed and poured with practiced ease. The small monk offers a quiet toast, wishing him luck, and the entire group raises their glasses in a cheerful toast. A rare moment of peace half a year since young Soyu first arrived in their world. As the masters enjoy their meal, Do-yeon reflects on the day's events. He chews his food, his expression growing more and more annoyed. He finally voices his frustration, questioning the entire point of the test. He argues that since he and another are already living there, they should be exempt. But the blue-haired master calmly insists that formalities are important. The elderly woman, however, agrees with Do-yeon, calling the test unfair. The silver-haired woman points out how much they've trained with Aang's clones, a fact that gave them a massive advantage in the second test. Do-yeon declares that the whole process is so rigged they shouldn't even have to take it. The memory shifts, showing a younger Do-yeon looking deeply uncomfortable. He complains that the whole thing is an annoyance and they should just be let in. But the silver-haired woman calls out another candidate's hypocrisy. She saw young Soyu quietly helping the others despite his complaints. A flashback shows him quietly manipulating the red-haired woman. The table falls silent as the attention shifts back to Do-yeon. The flower-headed master asks if he felt conflicted during the third test, an inquiry that sends the other masters into a fit of laughter. Do-yeon is furious, questioning if their trauma is really that funny. He screams that they should all be forced to take the same brutal test. Later that night, the silver-haired woman sleeps soundly, clearly unbothered. The elderly master playfully teases the silver-haired woman. As she's carried off, the conversation turns to Do-yeon. The mood in the room grows quiet and serious. The tiny monk asks if he's still haunted by the past. A memory of the battle flashes in his mind, of holding a fallen comrade. Do-yeon quickly denies it, trying to hide his unease. But the flower-headed master reminds him of the weight on his shoulders. He explains that the monastery is investing everything in him, and to that end, they've given him a special drink, the Dragon King wine. A legendary, top-secret alcohol that can transform a person's very being. A wine said to grant instant mastery of martial arts. He savors the last drop because you don't waste magic booze. A warm glow spreads through him as the wine takes effect. But the pleasant warmth gives way to a more intense feeling. His eyes snap open, filled with a newfound power. Golden energy crackles at his fingertips, manifesting a legendary weapon, once a sea god's treasure. A weapon once wielded by another of Cheongsan's chosen. And now, Do-yeon holds the legendary staff in his own hands. The staff of the Trident, a tool of immense power. He brandishes the staff, challenging the tiny monk before him. The master stares down the length of the weapon, unimpressed. But Do-yeon is filled with a new intoxicating power. A memory surfaces of the staff's previous owner, a kind woman who once looked after him with a gentle smile. A memory that ends in a flash of violence and loss. The weight of that moment settles in his eyes. The tiny monk simply taps the staff with his finger. But Do-yeon, fueled by the wine, is eager for a match. He declares that the magic alcohol has his blood boiling for a fight. The flower-headed master gives a silent signal, a simple nod of understanding. He bows as Do-yeon tells him to head back for the night. The boy then turns, bidding Master Yukwan a cheerful farewell. The legendary monk simply acknowledges him. The door slides shut, leaving him alone in the room. Master Yukwan glances over his shoulder at the sound. His expression is ancient and unreadable. He sits in the quiet, empty space, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Do-yeon is still buzzing with energy from the wine. The fourth and final test is the interview. A simple command: prove your skill in 5 minutes. The red-haired woman stands before a panel of legendary figures. Generals, warlords, and even Master Yukwan are among them. She realizes all of Cheongsan's star monks are gathered to watch. She's glad the test is individual, ensuring her skills remain secret. Gripping her beads, she prepares to show them her true power. Her name, Songjin, is called, and she unleashes her ability. Fiery chains erupt around her, a power known as trap. Elsewhere, another candidate shows off her undead friends. Another candidate unleashes a blast called the Almighty Shotgun, while a monk-like applicant seems to be having the time of his life. Outside, the crowd reacts to the sounds of the test. A silver-haired woman demonstrates her Gaia Pliern skill. The building shakes from the sheer power on display. A man with long hair spins 2 small cymbals. His eyes glow as he prepares his bone-breaking skill. The force of his attack cracks the very walls of the building. The blue-haired proctor watches on, seemingly unfazed. The camera pans down to a pair of simple, unassuming shoes. And now, it's young Soyu's turn to face the panel. He explains that he's been forbidden from using his skills, but he has another technique to show them. He then summons the Trident Staff, a legendary weapon that can slice through errors with a single touch. With that, he turns to leave, confident that his masters wouldn't dare fail him. But a voice calls him back. The silver-haired proctor smiles, pointing out an interesting development. It seems quite a few candidates have requested a one-on-one duel with young Soyu for their interview, a desperate attempt to leave a lasting impression on the judges. The proctor asks if he will accept their challenge, and our boy breaks into a wide, confident grin. He complains about what a bother it is, but his face tells a very different story. The challengers, it seems, were the ones who failed the first 2 tests. As young Soyu walks through the city that night, he's about to meet the most desperate of them all, A group of men approaches him from behind, just a few local thugs looking to make a scene. The leader questions if he's really Sungjin's disciple. Yang Soyu's amused reaction only fuels their taunts. The man admits he failed the previous test miserably. He pulls out a small vial, ready for a last-ditch effort. Believing that a victory over Yang Soyu will guarantee him a spot, he activates his skill, transforming into a monstrous beast. But before he can even finish his thought, Yang Soyu's fist is already in his face. The thug reels back, stunned by the unexpected power. The blow sends a shockwave through his entire body. Yang Soyu feels the power of the Dragon King wine coursing through him. He casually explains that he was holding back, to be nice. The other thugs move in, one unleashing a flurry of phantom fists. But Yang Soyu doesn't even flinch, ready to take the hit head-on. He simply crosses his arms, absorbing the full force of the attack. The attack lands, but Yang Soyu doesn't even move. His attacker can only stare in disbelief. Yang Soyu begins to lecture him on his weak technique. He explains that at the Cheongsan Monastery, there are skills 1,000 times more powerful. And for someone like him, who's been doping daily, these ordinary punches are completely useless. The thug collapses as his friend watches in shock. The last man standing is frozen in pure terror, and Yang Soyu celebrates with a truly villainous grin. The final thug unleashes a storm of sharp spikes, but a silver-haired girl suddenly appears calling out to him. She questions why he's hanging out in a dark alley. Her concern quickly shifts to the dinner they're about to miss. She warns him that soggy noodles are an unacceptable outcome. Yang Soyu can only stare, completely bewildered by the interruption. But the thought of ruined food snaps him to attention. The two walk off, leaving the thugs trapped and very confused. They casually discuss leaving the men there until someone complains. The next day, a notice announces the official initiation ceremony. The day of the initiation ceremony finally arrives, a grand affair for the new recruits. A candidate whispers that the test isn't over, and rankings won't be announced yet. But even without official results, everyone knows who the top newcomer is. Yang Soyu and the silver-haired girl stand among the other successful candidates. An announcer calls for the new member representative to give a declaration. The crowd murmurs in confusion, not recognizing the name. They question if such a candidate was even part of their group. A figure with gray hair steps out from the crowd, walking toward the stage. The camera focuses on a young man with a calm, determined expression. These are Cheongsan's representative monks, figures no one could fail to recognize. The story shifts to the towering Cheongsan headquarters, a place defined by the fluttering sashes of its monks. The chosen representative eagerly accepts his moment in the spotlight. He tries to focus, remembering who's watching from the crowd. As he begins his speech, the narrative shifts to someone else, someone who has been taking center stage since he was a child. Yang Soyu, the elementary scout representative, the middle school entrance ceremony representative, and the high school graduation representative, of course. But in the present, it's another young man reading the declaration. The cameras are all fixed on the young man at the podium. He soaks in the attention, a feeling he clearly enjoys. Master Yukwon notes that his love for the spotlight is just like Sungjin's. The story flashes back to Yang Soyu, who is still annoyed by the constant comparisons. He recalls the master's rather direct feedback on his hairstyle. The old monk watches the ceremony with a knowing smirk. The speaker on stage, however, is the very picture of confidence. Cheongsan's executives are all present, having already revealed his identity to the press. The message to the sponsors and the world is loud and clear. But behind all the pomp and circumstance lie the grim memories of why he's here. The red-haired woman and other recruits watch from the crowd. The silver-haired girl also looks on, her expression calm. The new members stand in formation, a path cleared between them. The representative grips the ceremonial scroll tightly, and with that, the reading concludes, with Yang Soyu's name ringing out. His confident display helps restore faith in Cheongsan's future. In the end, only 53 candidates made the final cut. Later, Yang Soyu and the silver-haired girl stand before a master. He explains that while others will find their roles slowly, they've been assigned directly to the new special task force. Their mission is clear, to hunt the dragon. The master reveals the 3 confirmed members, starting with Kara of Amipa, followed by the mysterious Horan of White Flame, and finally, a very surprised-looking Yang Soyu. They'll recruit more members while performing missions with senior monks. Yang Soyu immediately objects to the lineup, but his opinion is promptly disregarded. Master Yukwon then brings up the Dragon King wine he drinks every day, a legendary alcohol so expensive a single glass is worth an apartment. Kara can only look on with envy as he confirms how good it is. The master tells him to earn his keep, forcing him to find a way to make money. He suggests a way to make money: grave hunting. a practice that is exactly what it sounds like. It all started with a powerful ancient error, or more specifically with its corpse. The great errors of the past never decayed, their blood forming rivers, but their twisted energy also attracted other monsters to the area, and when the blood crystallized, it formed beautiful, expensive gems. By hunting the errors that gathered there, one could harvest these fragments. The further upstream you traveled, the larger and purer the gems became. But the danger increased as well, with barriers testing a monk's strength. A training method that is both a hunt and a treasure expedition. And Yang Soyu naturally is thrilled by the prospect of paid violence. Master Yukwan informs them a senior monk will be assigned to their team. He then explains that their time living at headquarters is over, because the monastery has prepared a brand new house for them. Kara begins to process the implications of this new arrangement. As Yang Soyu realizes they're expected to live together, the two share a look of profound mutual disinterest. But our boy's mind still wanders, until the master clarifies that no one is shipping this. In fact, to avoid any awkwardness, they'll be getting a third roommate. Master Yukwan's expression hardens with a thought, and their third roommate suggests they meet in person, an idea that leaves Kara looking a little surprised. The next day, Yang Soyu and Kara arrive at their new home, a very impressive house courtesy of the monastery. They marvel at the luxury as their new roommate looks on, a prime piece of real estate in the heart of the city, complete with a spacious private yard. But any sense of camaraderie vanishes as Yang Soyu makes a break for it. His eyes are set on the ultimate prize, the master bedroom. He throws open a door, triumphantly claiming his prize. But his victory is cut short by a sudden shocking sight. A figure with long brown hair stands silently by the window. Yang Soyu can only stammer, his mind reeling in disbelief. A memory surfaces of a younger, more carefree version of this man. Their third roommate is none other than Master Sungjin. The story shifts, introducing the man known as Sungjin, a skill user born into a family of orthodox monks. From childhood, he excelled in every academic pursuit, and dominated on the court with the same natural talent. His potential, even as a child, was beyond question. The proctors demanded his immediate admission, completely stunned. Even a very special skill couldn't explain the sight before them. Master Yukwan could only stare, utterly captivated by the boy's power. He told the young Sungjin that he was born for a special purpose. A purpose so great another master dared not even speak of it. A destiny that was clear to them from the very beginning. The memory fades, returning to the present day, and Yang Soyu is still reeling from the shock of who's before him. He can barely process the fact that Master Sungjin is his new roommate. Kara dryly notes how thrilled Yang Soyu must be with this arrangement. The long-haired Sungjin beckons him closer. He then drags a horrified Yang Soyu away from the master suite, showing him to a much more humble but still nice room. Yang Soyu's hand trembles as he reaches for the door. He suddenly breaks, grabbing onto Sungjin in desperation. He can't believe he has to live with this man. Sungjin seems to be mulling over the situation. He agrees to look after him until another roommate returns. He reminds Yang Soyu that they are one and the same. Yang Soyu can only bow, completely overwhelmed. A memory surfaces of a quiet hospital room where a baby is introduced as the new Yang Soyu. The man in the suit looks on, completely stunned by the situation, while the original boy in the bed can only look down in silence. His eyes widen with a dawning, horrified realization. He was being replaced, his very existence questioned. He was nothing more than a fake, an imposter in his own life. A memory of his training flashes, a brutal lesson from one of his masters. The monk screams at him, questioning his will to fight, demanding that he get up and step forward on his own. The master's words echo, telling him he must be the one to act. A final desperate command to eliminate the dragon himself. The memory of that hospital room returns, a bizarre introduction. The moment his entire world began to crumble, the insult that cut deeper than any physical blow. But in the present, Yang Soyu's head is bowed in resolve. He looks up, already asking when the paid violence begins. The blue-haired boy informs him they leave in 3 days. Yang Soyu collapses onto him, the weight of it all setting in. He immediately begins scheming to avoid his new roommate. 3 days later, the scene shifts to a vast mountainous landscape. The team arrives at a marshy riverbed, ready for their first mission. A man begins to introduce the members of this grave hunting party. He names himself as the team leader, Moon Gyal, alongside 2 senior monks. Then he introduces the 4 new recruits, including Yang Soyu and Kara. Moon Gyal explains that despite their different ranks, they share a single goal. And for the next 2 weeks, that goal is to make a whole lot of money. With the introductions over, the hunt officially begins. The leader points to the red energy swirling in the water. He explains that it's mixed with the blood of an ancient error. The river stretches for 66 kilometers, its water growing redder closer to the source. He shows them a clam, containing small fragments of the error's blood. These fragments are their currency, but the ones here are worthless, and sometimes the currency bites back. A lesson Moon Gyeo learns the hard way. He crushes the creature, warning that the monsters get stronger upstream. The first 20 kilometers are a free-for-all training ground, but this team, he says, is made of professionals. So they'll begin their real hunt after passing the 20-kilometer mark. Until then, it's just good old-fashioned physical training. Moon Gyeo announces that the senior monks will be taking a shortcut. The new recruits protest, questioning why they're the only ones who have to run. Kara watches in awe as the seniors prepare to use a spatial movement skill. One of them pops back out to announce the stakes. First place picks dinner, last place gets chores. Another senior monk seems to be granted an exception, but he's promptly shoved into the portal anyway. With a flash, the portal vanishes and the race officially begins. The recruits take off, sprinting through the shallow river. Well, most of them do. He watches them go with a sly, calculating look in his eyes. But one of the recruits plants his foot firmly in the water, and with a burst of speed, he surges past the others. The bored-looking man from before now wears a confident smirk. He recalls a lesson on how to move without resistance, and the daily dose of Dragon King wine that makes it all possible. With a wicked grin, Yang Soyu makes his move. He blazes past the other recruit in a flash. The man can only stare in disbelief, wondering who just passed him. But another recruit, a bald man, seems to be having the time of his life. Yang Soyu calls out, acknowledging his speed before pulling ahead. The other recruit can only stare in stunned silence, a look that quickly twists into a manic, competitive grin. The two of them are now neck and neck, tearing through the water. The man screams that he has to be first, claiming it's a medical issue, a very specific disease where he dies if he's behind a bald person. He surges forward with a desperate look on his face, trying to overtake the bald monk who is just enjoying the run. The two of them now race side by side, locked in a bizarre contest, but the bald monk simply leaps across the rocks, taking a shortcut. The other recruit points furiously, accusing him of cheating with a skill. He furiously questions how the monk could possibly outrun him. The bald monk cheerfully admits he got permission to use his skill. He then opens his robe, revealing a massive scar across his chest. He explains that he was once very sick, pointing to the glowing wound. A special skill is the only thing keeping his heart beating, so he has no choice but to keep it active or he'll die. And as a bonus, it makes him a great runner. Young Soyu can only stare, completely lost for words. His shock quickly turns to pure, unadulterated rage, and he pushes forward with a new, furious determination. An expression of pure, unadulterated annoyance, a rage that burns with the heat of 1,000 suns. The other recruits can only watch as the two leaders vanish. One runs with pure joy, the other with pure spite. Yang Soyu pushes forward, his face a mask of grim focus, but his rage suddenly breaks into a manic laugh. The bald monk seems a bit confused by this sudden change of heart, but Yang Soyu is lost in a fit of hysterical, competitive laughter. He then stops, suggesting they bend the rules a little, and with a grin, he summons the legendary trident. The bald monk suddenly panics, claiming something has appeared, and Yang Soyu takes the opportunity to swing the staff but misses completely. He arrives at the finish line, proudly declaring himself the winner, already planning the expensive victory dinner he's earned. But Moon Gyeo is reminded that as a senior monk, he's just come in last, a fact that seems to shock even Yang Soyu, because according to the final rankings, our boy was eliminated. The group eventually arrives at the 20-kilometer transit gate, where they're greeted by a woman at the reception desk. Moon Gyeo steps forward to get their passes, noting how empty the place is. He comments on how quiet it is, remembering past trips when they had to wait. The receptionist explains that things have changed recently. A notice warns of multiple casualties from unknown causes, a detail that immediately catches Moon Gyeo's attention. The woman confirms there's been an increase in strange injuries. He presses her for more details, asking just how severe they are. Her expression darkens as she describes the gruesome nature of the attacks. She then smiles sweetly, asking if they still want their passes. The grim news leaves the senior monks looking a little uneasy. Moon Gyeo explains that 3 of them are veterans, while the other 4 are rookies. The receptionist cheerfully greets the new members of the monastery. She explains that her office also buys the minerals they collect, and with a smile, she wishes them luck, eager to see who earns the most. The team heads out, the competitive tension already building. One of the senior monks immediately proposes another bet on their earnings. He challenges Yang Soyu directly, winner decides dinner. The stakes quickly escalate to an absurd amount of manual labor for the loser. And with that, the grave hunt officially begins. Yang Soyu is the first to strike, fending off a creature from the water. But his eyes widen, caught off guard by what he sees. He realizes he's only ever trained with Aang's clones. But today, he finally gets to hunt a real error. He brings the staff down with a manic, joyful strike. A wide grin spreads across his face, relishing the fight. Moon Gil watches from a distance, recognizing the legendary weapon. The trident, a staff that can be summoned at will by its owner. He remembers the mysterious boy Master Yu Guan brought in, and now that same boy is cleaving through monsters with ease. The sight reminds him of the weapon's previous wielder. He's stunned by how much Yang Soyu resembles that very person. He laughs, declaring he'll wipe out every single error as Kara questions his complete lack of dignity. But Moon Gil sees a younger Sungjin in his movements, a comparison our boy would probably love. The other recruits are also showing their skills, like Zhang Huinam's imagery-based attacks. Kara unleashes her Gaia skill, manipulating the iron around her, while another, Astrid, uses her undead friends to control the blood of the fallen. The scene shifts to a quiet, mountainous landscape, settling on a large, unassuming barn. Inside, the receptionist from the transit gate tells a man she's leaving for the day. But she stops him with a sudden, urgent request, asking him to calculate the value of some blood fragments before he goes. A blood-splattered recruit grins maniacally over his haul of gems. He shoves his earnings at the receptionist, demanding a count. His eyes burn with a single obsessive question: who earned the most? The receptionist calmly tells the group to wash up before entering. Later, the loser of the bet begins his punishment, chopping wood by hand. The bald monk continues his task as the winner. Reuter watches with a smug grin. Reuter vows that tomorrow will be different, confident he's mastered the technique. He boasts about his first day hunting, while the bald monk, Jisung, recalls his own past struggles. The two declare their rivalry as Kara tells them to stop and come inside. She announces that dinner has arrived, much to Reuter's culinary disappointment. Kara seems less than thrilled with the meal choice. The next day, Moon Gil announces another training run to the 20-kilometer point. And once again, the two rivals shoot off ahead of the group. The others follow at a more reasonable pace, a friendly competition. But up front, it's still a battle of pure spite versus pure joy. Yang Soyu greets the receptionist, much to Kara's visible embarrassment. The hunt continues, with Moon Gil cleaving through another monster. A quick lesson on error classification, from annoying to world-ending. The river itself is a gradient of danger, growing stronger upstream. After days of pushing further, they finally aim for the 60-kilometer mark. A team of hunters, each with their own purpose, but for now they're just a bunch of tired monks. They're approached by a pair of local hunters, who ask if they're here to investigate the recent incidents. One of their own was just taken away, badly injured. A warning that echoes the receptionist's grim report of attacks that left victims in pieces. The news hangs heavy over the senior monks. He asks where the attack took place, learning it was deep in the hunting grounds. He presses for more details, knowing the victims were skilled. But the man says there was no sign of an error at all. The man recounts a story of a hunter in the Red River who suddenly found his boot sliced open. He was confused, knowing his gear was knife-proof. But before he could react, a figure rushed him from the mist. The result was a scene of pure, unspeakable violence. The hunter explains that no one is talking, but the attacks are increasing, and the injuries are preventing anyone from passing the 60-kilometer barrier. Moon Gil considers investigating the mystery himself. But the hunter offers one final, strange clue. He warns them of a mysterious duo that has been clearing the area. He explains that the 40-kilometer section is usually left alone for trainees, but this duo has been tearing through it with an obsessive energy. He struggles to recall their names as the senior monks listen, and then it hits him. The infamous rivals, Jisung and Reuter. The hunter begs the Cheongsan monks to do something about the strange situation. The team finally arrives at the ominous 60-kilometer mark. The air is heavy, and the creatures are far more aggressive. Even the water itself feels different, thick with a dark energy. Moon Gil warns them that from here, they'll face much stronger errors. He tells the team to focus on survival above all else. Yang Soyu cuts down another creature with a focused gaze. He notes that harvesting the gems is the real work. But Kara's voice suddenly calls out to him. She asks if he's been hurt, a look of concern on her face. He seems confused by the question, but she points out the obvious. His boot has been torn, a clean slice through the reinforced material. One of the senior monks approaches, asking to inspect the damage. His expression grows tense as he realizes the implication. He quickly turns, calling out a warning to the rest of the team. Moon Gil orders everyone to look ahead, their hunt suddenly on hold. A ripple in the water signals that something has appeared. The entire team freezes as the river churns violently beneath them. The surface begins to bulge, rising from the depths. A pillar of red water and light erupts into the air. The force of the blast sends a shockwave through the group. Moon Gayal identifies it as a vicious error that commands drowned skill users. He calls it the water ghost, as two horrifying figures emerge from the river. But while the others look on in shock, one of the senior monks seems absolutely thrilled. The grotesque creatures stand before them, dripping with malice, and the senior monk's excitement only grows, much to the rookie's confusion. Two of the rookies look on with pure, unadulterated excitement, but the senior monk frantically tries to stop them. As a wall of blue fire erupts to form a defensive barrier, he tries to lecture them on the dangers of the water ghost. But one of the rookies cheerfully confirms they already know. The senior monk is stunned by their casual confidence. The rookie explains that they practiced before coming here. He tells the veteran to stand back and watch the show. The senior can only stare, completely dumbfounded. But the real threat is revealed in a familiar bleeding wound. The senior monk lets out a long, weary sigh. He screams at the rookies to be careful as they face the creature. The water ghost let out a horrifying, silent scream, but the two rookies just look thrilled by the whole ordeal. An explanation reveals why these errors are so feared. They command the bodies of those who have drowned. To defeat them, one must find the main body, which is always hidden, and some of their puppets can even use their old skills. But Kara realizes something important about the river itself. The red color means it's full of iron, the very element she controls. She explains that the longer the iron has been deposited, the more powerful she becomes, declaring herself invincible here. Her eyes gleam with a newfound confidence. She prepares to unleash her Gaia plus iron skill. Using the very waste product of the ancient error, she summons a forest of sharp, metallic spikes from the riverbed. The iron pillars erupt from the water, instantly trapping the grotesque puppets in their grasp. The entire river is transformed into a deadly cage of her own making. She grins, explaining that this much iron makes it perfectly fine to go all out. A place where she can unleash her full power without restraint. She finds the destructive display to be incredibly stress-relieving. A mental note is made by everyone present. Don't get on her bad side. Moon Gayal recognizes her as the famous princess of Amipa, a metal attribute genius the monastery spent years trying to recruit. Even as a master of the elements, he can see her talent is on another level. But just then, another recruit's foot slams into the water, having found the source. It's Reuter, who has located the water ghost's main body. His eyes lock onto the hidden target, his expression one of pure, focused intensity. He unleashes his skill, a concentrated blast of pure light, and hurls it across the churning red river. The water ghost's main body watches from within its iron prison. It reveals its core as if daring him to strike. The creature catches the projectile with a single, contemptuous hand. But the light pierces through, striking its core with explosive force, and the main body is instantly vaporized. Reuter gives a thumbs up, clearly fishing for a compliment. Moon Gayal can only stare, his jaw practically on the floor. Because the rookie just landed a perfect shot from 500 meters away, Yang Soyu asks if this is where they find the expensive minerals. A senior monk explains that water ghosts absorb their victims' loot. A flashback shows they trained for this, as a senior notes Yang Soyu's strong stomach. And our boy is practically drooling at the thought of the treasure inside. The others watch as he inspects the remains of the creature. He pulls out a strange, glowing red orb from the mess. A look of pure shock spreads across the receptionist's face. It's a red pearl, one of the rarest and most valuable gems, and Yang Soyu has found an entire bag full of them. Moon Gayal can barely ask how much the treasure is worth. The receptionist can barely calculate the staggering price. Later that day, the team returns to their lodge. Moon Gayal emerges from the river after a quick wash. The others are already buzzing about their newfound wealth. But Moon Gayal's mind is on a much more important matter. The team throws out suggestions for their victory dinner. And with their new fortune, he suggests something a little fancy. An idea that the rookies are very, very excited about. But elsewhere in the dark, the red river flows silently, and a pair of glowing red eyes watches from the shadows. A figure whose glowing red eyes pierce the darkness. Back at the lodge, Reuter explains they practiced relentlessly. He says he threw his projectile until it became muscle memory, while Kara, having done her part, is completely passed out. A flashback shows an old master teaching a younger Moon Gayal. He explains an old fishing technique of using a stone and a spear. A merciful method, he calls it, to only catch what's needed. He then applies the lesson. Kara is the stone, and Reuter is the spear. They trained so the spear would never miss its mark. Reuter complains they were trained so hard they couldn't even go home. Reuter says this is much better than being at home. Moon Gayal seems a little taken aback by his attitude. But the senior monk's expression is far more serious. He admits he was surprised by their performance. He explains just how rare their find truly was. The receptionist was apparently left speechless by their haul. He asks Reuter why he isn't more surprised by it all. The rookie just gives him a knowing, confident grin. He claims to have a secret weapon. Good luck. A statement that leaves Moon Gyeol completely speechless. Moon Gyeol can only question the absurd claim, but Reuter is already challenging him to a game to prove it. The two throw down their hands in a quick match. Reuter cheerfully announces that they tied. He then explains that if something had been at stake, the outcome would have been very different. He recalls always winning prizes as a child, and even getting the exact classroom seat he wanted. He's certain that when it truly matters, he never loses. Because his greatest weapon, he claims, isn't his skill. It's his luck, he clenches his fist. That is his true power. So catching the most profitable error in the area wasn't surprising at all. Moon Gyeol is left completely speechless by the claim. He realizes that as absurd as it sounds, the kid's conviction is real. He reflects on the qualities of a great monk, a healthy body and natural talent, and an unshakable spirit that can face any challenge. Reuter's memories are filled with moments of pure, unexplainable luck, a power that seems to be working on senior monks too. But Moon Gyeol's hand tightens as his thoughts turn inward. He remembers a time when his own knee was injured. He recalls the time he was selecting members for a task force, a mission that ended with a brutal, career-altering injury. He explains the lasting damage means he can't keep up anymore. Reuter, meanwhile, is just wondering if the old man is okay. Moon Gyeol admits that now he can only help newcomers adapt. He thought he had accepted his limits with no regrets, but seeing these rookies has sparked something new in him. His gaze sharpens with a sudden, powerful resolve. He wants to run alongside this outstanding new generation. And with that, he declares they're pushing on to the 66-kilometer point. Moon Gyeol mentions their final destination, the 66-kilometer point, the very source of the river, where the ancient error's corpse lies. He explains their grave hunt has another more important purpose, to investigate the source of the river itself. The monastery has heard rumors of strange casualties in the area, and the grim reports from the locals confirm their worst fears. This mission, he realizes, has become far more dangerous. But he tries to rally the troops with a little financial motivation. Reuter agrees, pointing out that money is a much better motivator than vague promises of strength. And with that, the team is ready to face the challenge. Kara asks Reuter why he's not using his spatial movement skill, but Moon Gyeol suggests that running together for a day isn't so bad. Reuter seems to like the sound of that. Breaking into a wide, cheerful grin, the stakes are immediately set, with the losers' dinner duties getting increasingly absurd. And with that, they push forward to the 60-kilometer mark. Moon Gyeol's expression grows tense, his heart pounding. He remembers a warning from Master Yukwan before they left, a reminder that two of the rookies are indispensable to the monastery, and his primary mission was to ensure they didn't get hurt. But a sudden presence makes his heart pound in his chest. A figure with white hair and glowing red eyes offers a chilling greeting. She floats in the air, asking if they've come to see her again. The entire hunting party can only stare up in stunned silence. One of the rookies struggles to process the impossible sight. Even Moon Gyeol is at a complete loss, his mind reeling. A memory surfaces of a master's warning. The sky is the dragon's domain, a place where their enemy could flee completely beyond their reach. And in the present, Moon Gyeol's face twists with dawning horror. He immediately prepares to counter, calling on the power of the elements. He throws up a wall of pure energy, a desperate defense. He screams at the other senior monk, ordering him to get the two rookies to safety. His mind races with a grim calculation of sacrifice. The goal isn't victory, but ensuring some of them survive. The scene flashes back to a lesson on spatial movement. A strange jelly creature demonstrates the skill's properties. Reuter explains that timing is the most critical factor, a lesson that came with a very hands-on, painful demonstration. And Moon Gyeol had listened intently, absorbing every word. The senior monk explains that his spatial skill has its limits. He then reveals the real reason he joined this mission. Master Yukwan gave him a direct order to protect the two new superstars. He'll get them to a hospital, but for everyone else, there's a fee. Back in the present, he screams at Moon Gyeol to get through the portal. But Moon Gyeol's hand is met with a powerful, cracking resistance. He realizes the barrier isn't just a simple wall of water. His expression hardens with a grim resolve. He summons a weapon of pure light, said to cut through anything, and prepares to fight alongside the very rookies he was meant to protect. He weighs his options, wondering if the rookies will obey. But Reuter's eyes widen in disbelief. As Moon Gyeol unleashes a torrent of blue energy, the rookie screams, questioning why the senior is fighting alone. But Moon Gyeol's gaze is fixed, his decision made. His attack rushes toward the floating woman in the sky. She counters with a sphere of pure red energy. Moon Gyeol can only stare as his attack is nullified. Reuter looks on, his expression hardening with resolve. The other senior monk prepares to enter the fray. The scene shifts to a symbolic vision of a red-haired man's influence reaching down to Kara. The story then cuts to a rainy day at Cheongsan headquarters. Inside, a young man in a suit looks up in surprise. He's meeting with a rather unique-looking monk. The two of them are alone in a massive modern office. The monk seems to be asking about Yang Soyu. He sips his coffee, his expression filled with anxiety. But the young man suddenly collapses, sending the coffee flying. The monk panics, grabbing him and demanding to know who sent him. The young man can only stare back, completely bewildered. The tiny monk clings to his leg, his face a mask of fear. Doyeon can only stare back, utterly confused by the question. He scrambles onto the desk, demanding to know why the creature appeared. He screams that they were just supposed to be on a grave hunt. His panic escalates, questioning why this enemy is here. He remembers the figure that was floating in the sky, a vision of the woman with the glowing empty eyes, a being he now recognizes as a dragon. The realization sends a wave of pure terror through him, and the tiny monk's grip tightens, trying to snap him out of it. The tiny monk's panic seems to summon a vision of a headless figure grabbing Doyeon with immense strength. He's thrown across the room as if he weighs nothing. Then the scene shifts to Kara, who is suddenly under attack. She's sent flying through the air by an unseen force. A shadowy hand reaches out, grabbing her by the wrist. Her world explodes in a flash of violent red light. She finds herself in a different place, calling out for Yang Soyu. She looks up to see Master Yukwan staring down at her, and she can only call out his name in complete shock. Kara frantically begs Master Yukwan to send her back. Doyeon echoes her panic, desperate for a way to return to the fight. A grim vision flashes of the carnage they left behind. But the scene shifts to a quiet room, where a spoonful of food is offered. A man with a lotus tattoo tries to coax a silent Sungjin to eat. But Sungjin, hooked up to an IV, simply refuses. The man tries to lighten the mood, imagining the others helping him. But Sungjin's expression remains distant and somber. The lotus-tattooed man can only watch him with a gentle smile. Sungjin quietly says that the kids will be back soon. He tells Sungjin to try and get along with the kids when they return. The story then flashes back to the 20-kilometer transit gate. Inside, other hunters are going about their business, until two men burst in, frantically calling for the staff. The receptionist looks up, her face a mask of shock. A bloodied Astrid appears, ordering an immediate evacuation. She stands with the fallen, her undead friend's skill active. The receptionist points in terror at the figures behind her, but Astrid explains she's only brought them for a proper burial. The grim procession of the fallen moves toward the gate. The other hunters can only ask what's happening, as Astrid looks back in horror, because the entire Red River is now flowing backwards. Elsewhere, a pair of feet dangle in an endless void. The dragon-like being notes that there were 7 hunters in total. She reports that 3 of them managed to escape, including Kara. But there's another boy who has caught her attention. A memory flashes in her mind. She confirms her suspicion to the entity before her, that the boy was wielding the legendary trident, and she realizes the hunting party had no idea she was waiting for them. A vision of the hunting party, their faces blank and indistinct. A monstrous voice from the darkness speaks of fate. A terrifying creature emerges, laughing at their misfortune. It unleashes a torrent of pure, destructive energy. The world is consumed by a blinding red light, a power that seems to tear through the very void. The energy begins to coalesce, taking a new form, and from the blast, a familiar figure emerges. The white-haired woman stands reborn in the crimson glow. She opens her eyes, a calm, knowing smile on her face. She stands in her true form, a being of immense and terrible power. Her red eyes hold a cold, ancient calm. She reflects on this body, deciding a previous shrouded form is no longer needed. And with that thought, she sheds the last remnants of her disguise. She steps into a crimson pool, a skull resting in the depths. Raising a long pin, she prepares for one final brutal act. Her eyes flash with a terrible resolve, and she strikes down her other self with a single, decisive blow. She lets out a sigh, holding a piece of the horn she just shattered. A smirk plays on her lips as she reveals the other was just a hasty creation. She reflects on her failure, calling the escape of 3 hunters a disgrace. Her power, it seems, is tied to the ancient error known as the mermaid. She addresses the skull, claiming this new creation will be far more useful. She begins a dark ritual, preparing to awaken the ancient remains. With a single decisive motion, she drives a long pin into the bone, causing a violent reaction to ripple through the skeletal frame. As she floats above, a wave of crimson energy spreads from the skull, erupting from the ancient creature's remains with terrifying force. The power surges through the void, a torrent of raw, untamed energy, and she looks on, covered in the aftermath with a chillingly satisfied smile. A voice muses on human arrogance, calling a river of blood a corpse. The ritual's energy continues to pulse outward in a crimson wave, and from it a new being is born, stained and incomplete. A blank slate standing before its creator in the void. A young girl asks the Dragon Lord if the creation is a success. The new being's eyes flash open, burning with red light. It takes the form of a young man with a chilling, familiar smile. He stands before his master, a new pawn in the game. The master seems pleased with the result of his work. He declares their time here is over, ready to move on. The white-haired woman notes she'll need to hide while her horn regrows. She tells her new creation that it's time for them to leave. The group turns to depart, led by the Dragon Lord himself. But their master suddenly stops in his tracks. He turns to his new pawn with a knowing, sinister smile, a thought that sends the boy into a fit of manic, vengeful laughter. The Dragon Lord muses on the concept of grave hunting and asks if they should make a few more graves before they depart. The scene shifts to the now quiet, blood-red river at sunset, but the peace is shattered by a horrifying, echoing scream. The aftermath is grim, with a fallen hunter on the ground. The scene shifts to a much more relaxed setting, a sauna and spa. Inside, Do-yeon explains that Astrid contacted them before the attack. He promises to organize the information he's received. The tiny monk is on the floor, bowing in apology. Do-yeon seems unbothered as the monk insists it was an accident. He pleads that he had no idea the dragon was hiding there. He continues to apologize, clearly terrified by the mistake. The lotus-tattooed man arrives, accompanied by a familiar headless figure. He comforts the tiny monk, explaining that Kara is safe with Aang for now. Aang gently comforts a shaken Kara. Elsewhere, Do-yeon reaches for a hairdryer, but lets it fall, his mind clearly elsewhere. He looks back, his expression troubled. The scene shifts to the city at night. As he rides in a car with the lotus-tattooed man, the man asks what's on his mind, and Do-yeon admits he's thinking about his master. He explains the torment of his nightly dreams since he was 15, and how coming to this world finally gave him an answer. He says that if he believes the answer he found, he shouldn't be angry. But a single word hangs in the air, a quiet contradiction. He admits that despite everything, he is still furious, and he's been wondering where he can possibly vent his anger. The lotus-tattooed man asks if he's the intended target. Do-yeon dismisses the idea, wisely not picking a fight with the driver. The driver then suggests Master Yukwan as a potential outlet. Do-yeon admits he'd like to take a swing at the old monk, but he'd feel too guilty hitting someone so small. He says seeing the tiny master trying to hide his tears made it bearable. The lotus-tattooed man continues, a gentle smile on his face. He mentions that someone used to admire Moon Gaeol's tough exterior. Do-yeon just looks away, dismissing the thought entirely. But the older man's gaze remains fixed on him. Their van continues through the city as night begins to fall. They soon arrive at a spacious, modern house. The lotus-tattooed man says he's just here to change an IV. He carries a medical kit, ready for the task. The two of them step inside the quiet home. Do-yeon heads up the stairs, his expression unreadable. He pauses on the landing, looking down. His eyes snap wide with a sudden furious thought, and he suddenly bolts down the stairs. He grabs Sungjin by the hair, yanking his head back. The lotus-tattooed man tries to intervene, but Sungjin's expression is one of pure annoyance. Do-yeon, however, looks absolutely ecstatic. He declares that this is exactly what he needed. He then asks Sungjin what he just called him. The word fake echoes, a clear trigger for his rage. He cracks his knuckles, declaring that Sungjin deserves this. He celebrates, arguing that since they share a soul, he's just hitting himself. The act seems to bring him a strange sense of relief, a feeling he expresses with a rather loud burp. He smiles, suddenly excited about their new living situation. His grip on Sungjin's hair tightens with a sinister glee. He leans in, thanking him for the stress relief and suggesting they get along. But Sungjin, thoroughly unimpressed, flicks him on the forehead. The lotus-tattooed man decides he's seen enough for one day, and quietly excuses himself, leaving the two of them to it. The two stand in the quiet room. The IV stand a silent witness. Do-yeon immediately finds a new, petty reason to complain. The tension between the two counterparts is palpable. A quiet stillness settles over the simple bedroom. Sungjin finally breaks the silence with a single word, and Do-yeon is left completely stunned by his audacity. He calls Sungjin a devil for his cold-heartedness. He can't believe he'd take his anger out on a patient. The lotus-tattooed man points out that Do-yeon has his own issues, but Sungjin clarifies that he's not the physical type. Do-yeon can only stare back, completely confused. He suddenly stumbles, falling to his knees before Sungjin, who promptly sits on his back because of course he does. Sungjin then stands, looking down at his other self. His expression is cold, his patience clearly gone. He says that he prefers to use his words, but his hand tightens around the metal IV stand. He declares that they're all the same kind of person, and with a furious roar he swings the stand like a weapon. The scene shifts, showing him threatening a very confused Yang Soyu. Do-yeon stares up, challenging his other self to a fight. Sungjin's expression is pure, unhinged fury. The two of them struggle for control of the metal stand, a chaotic brawl that sends them both tumbling across the room. Sungjin declares that this is the perfect way to settle things. Do-yeon grabs a new weapon, screaming that Sungjin deserves this. The base of a chair becomes a makeshift flail. He lunges forward, ready to strike, but Sungjin meets his charge with equal ferocity, and the two counterparts collide in a blur of motion. Do-yeon's hand shoots out, grabbing Sungjin by the collar. His eyes are wide with a furious, manic energy, but Sungjin meets his gaze, his own expression just as unhinged. Their hands lock in a tense, trembling struggle for control. Do-yeon breaks into a wide, triumphant grin. He spins his counterpart around with surprising force, tripping him with a well-placed foot, and throws him onto the bed in a single, fluid motion. He follows up with a series of powerful strikes, screaming down at the man he calls a weakling. He taunts Sungjin, calling him weaker than a child, but Sungjin grabs him, his voice dripping with contempt. Do-yeon backs away, the fight seemingly over, but his hand finds the discarded IV bag, and in a moment of petty rage, he bursts it over the bed. He declares that Sungjin can forget about dinner now. He kicks the furniture, his frustration boiling over, screaming that he just wanted a real fight. Sungjin watches the tantrum with a cold, calculating gaze. As Do-yeon wonders how to deal with his infuriating counterpart, his mind flashes back to his parents, his frustration mounting. He remembers his masters, the words catching in his throat. A blur of memories from this strange new life, and he finally admits that he feels absolutely terrible. But Sungjin has a very different way of dealing with emotions. A chair leg to the face tends to end most conversations. Sungjin stands over him, his patience clearly at its end. But Do-yeon just turns back with a calm, calculating look. A memory surfaces of a masked master hanging upside down. An idea that Do-yeon decides to try out for himself. He tries to reassure the master, telling him not to be scared. The master, hanging upside down, calmly points out it's only the second floor. He continues his lecture saying people go crazy cooped up inside. A perfectly normal way to get some fresh air if you ask him. Do-yeon tells him to take a few deep breaths and cool his head. He admits that it's been a terrible day for both of them, so he suggests they both try to calm down together. He begins a guided breathing exercise from the balcony. He demonstrates taking a slow deep breath in, and the masked master follows his lead, exhaling from his precarious position. The breathing exercise continues, a moment of forced calm, but the memory it triggers is anything but calm, of a young boy screaming in agony. He remembers being held by his masters, crying out from a terrible wound. The blue-haired man tries to soothe him, urging him to just breathe. He explains that it's only a dream, as a flustered woman apologizes for the accident. She was the one who caused the injury, and her guilt is written all over her face. A memory that also highlights how the gentle master could never stay mad at her. He instead turns it into a lesson, explaining that tough training prevents future pain. He tells the boy that in a real fight he must learn to push through the agony, a lesson that ends with a frustrated curse and a gentle reprimand. Do-yeon looks out from the balcony, his expression unreadable. He glances over at his companion, who is currently being held upside down by his ankles. Do-yeon lets out a long, calming breath. He finds the whole situation rather amusing as he pulls the master back up. He then ties the master up for good measure. Do-yeon stands over the hooded figure, who sits silently. He scratches his head, seemingly at a loss. He tells the master to come inside once he's calmed down, and with that, he leaves the man to contemplate his life choices on the balcony. He warns the master not to catch a cold or he'll tattle. Do-yeon can only wonder why the man is acting so childish, but the master's hands begin to glow with a strange energy. He breaks free from his bonds and rises to his feet. Do-yeon's expression hardens, his patience finally gone. The master lunges forward with a sudden, powerful strike, but Do-yeon catches the attack with surprising ease. He deflects a flurry of blows from the enraged master. A sudden realization seems to snap him out of his anger. His eyes widen with a dawning, horrified understanding. A thin line of red appears on Do-yeon's neck. The master's body crackles with power, a clear sign that Do-yeon is in trouble. He gulps, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. He quickly tries to de-escalate, suggesting they talk things out, an offer that is immediately and painfully rejected. With diplomacy off the table, he has no choice but to summon a weapon. He lands a solid blow right across the master's head, but his expression shifts to one of confusion. The master is bleeding, but he's far from defeated. In fact, the attack has only made him stronger, his rage now palpable. Do-yeon's eyes widen as a nervous sweat breaks out. He braces himself, his feet planted firmly on the floor. The two of them face off in the dimly lit room, ready for another round, and their fight erupts in a blur of chaotic motion. Do-yeon tries to reason with him, warning that they'll both suffer the consequences, but his plea is met with a fist flying directly toward his face. The blow sends him reeling backward with incredible force. The master stands over him, bloodied but far from finished. Do-yeon collapses to the floor, the fight seemingly over, and the master reaches up, preparing to finally reveal his face. Do-yeon stands over him, a look of pure, smug satisfaction. Sungjin can only curse him from the floor, utterly defeated. He offers a final, defiant gesture of disrespect, a gesture that Do-yeon is more than happy to return. And with that, the chaotic brawl between the two counterparts is finally over. The scene shifts back to the Cheongsan headquarters. Inside a VIP room, a lecture is about to begin. Master Yugwan reminds them of the sacrifice made to bring them back. He can't believe they'd waste that chance on a petty fight. Later, a bandaged Do-yeon argues his case, insisting he wasn't the one who started it. Master Yugwan continues the lecture, asking who threw the first punch. But Yang Soyu points to his own injuries, asking if they count for nothing. He then offers a thought of his own, a new perspective on the situation. He begins a surprisingly philosophical argument about the nature of reality, explaining that senses can be distorted, and pain can be an illusion. He brings up the vivid dreams he's had since childhood, and how this new world feels no different from those nightly visions. He says that after much consideration, his conclusion is simple. In the end, this is all just an extension of a dream, and when he finally wakes up, none of it will have mattered at all. He declares that to his real self, this is all just a dream, and so he makes his intentions perfectly clear. He will never take any of this seriously. No matter what happens to anyone, or what is done to him, not even the memory of a gentle hand can change his mind. He clenches his fist, vowing that he will never waver. Because in the end, it's all just one big dream anyway. Elsewhere, a headless figure carries a small child down a hall. He explains that he thought putting the two together would be good for them, but they just fight. But a silver-haired master simply smiles, telling him to let them be. Do-yeon visits Sungjin, teasing him about the hospital food. He holds up a spoonful, knowing the man will refuse it. But to his surprise, Sungjin takes a bite, a reaction that leaves Do-yeon completely stunned. Sungjin's expression shifts to one of pure, manic energy. He continues to eat, a new fire in his eyes. He remembers the humiliation of being hung upside down, and he vows to never let that insult slide. Do-yeon smiles, pleased that his little stimulation worked. Sungjin looks ahead, his resolve now fully restored. Meanwhile, in Master Yugwan's private prayer room, a legendary sword rests on its display, but a strange red energy begins to emanate from its hilt. The glow intensifies, pulsing with an ancient power. The sword begins to vibrate, lifting from its stand on its own, and in a flash of light it shoots out of the room. Tearing through the very roof of the monastery's headquarters, it soars into the night, a streak of light over the city. The other monks can only speculate that the sword has found a new owner. But an elder panics, screaming that the demon sword is loose and must be found. They realize they must find the new owner before the dragon does. The story flashes back to the original special task force, where one member was a woman named Aya, who raised the Red Crow, and the other was Chaeyoung, chosen by the demon sword, a title that grants even an ordinary person immense power. But the sword chose a new owner just 6 months after her death, an unusually short time that raised expectations among the monks. Back in the present, a bandaged foot steps forward. The onlookers turn, their expressions filled with surprise, a reaction that quickly turns to utter disbelief. The monks are left shocked by the sword's new owner, a young blindfolded girl with bandaged legs. She announces that she's here to see Master Yukgwan, but General Namgung Paji immediately blocks her path. He demands to know her purpose for being here. The girl simply presents the legendary demon sword. Her eyes glow as she demands they take the sword back. She rephrases, saying she's come to make a deal. Her demeanor shifts, becoming almost childlike again, leaving the general defeated with a list of every senior monk's address. She explains that her master has been at Cheongsan for a very long time, and he knows every secret, from addresses to weaknesses, a clear threat. To prove her point, she reveals her colleague has already visited 2 monks. The scene cuts to a dark alley. showing the grim results of that visit. A blood-soaked young man with a glowing eye smiles from a stairwell. The girl raises the sword, screaming for them to bring Master Yukguan. The old general can only curse the demon sword for its choice. In a meeting, Master Yukguan realizes the sword chose an error, a dragon's subordinate. He panics, realizing this news must never reach Yang Soyu, who adored the previous owner. The tiny master trembles with rage, fearing what Yang Soyu might do. A memory flashes of the sword's previous owner, Chiongan, in a desperate battle. And in the present, a nurse confirms that Yang Soyu knows everything and is on his way. Master Yukguan listens, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He's soon joined by the headless master and Yang Soyu himself for a meeting. The boy calmly sips his tea, his expression completely unreadable. He sets the cup down with a quiet, deliberate motion. The headless master dismisses him, telling him to wait outside. Leaving Yang Soyu alone with the tiny, furious monk, Master Yukguan begins, explaining they have new information. But Yang Soyu reveals that Astrid already told them everything. Of course she did. She explains that she finally received a call from the front lines, describing an attack of seemingly harmless petals that can slice through flesh. A deadly skill known as the full bloom of 100 flowers, an ability that tore through the other monks with terrifying ease. Yang Soyu confirms that he knows the girl is a subordinate of the dragon. Master Yukguan then reveals the dragon was at the grave hunting grounds and has taken the ancient mermaid's corpse. He then changes the subject, his tone growing serious. Yang Soyu explains he chose that mission because he thought the barriers would keep them safe. A choice Master Yukguan admits he agreed with, believing it was the safest place for them. But that assumption, it seems, was a fatal mistake. Master Yukguan explains the girl is currently confined in the basement. The demon sword has ironically sealed her original powers. But the real problem, he says, is the sword itself. It controls its master and will counter any attack against her. Because despite its name, it's a hero sword at its core. It instinctively tries to eliminate any errors it finds nearby, which is a bit of a problem when its wielder is also an error. Yang Soyu can only call the entire situation ridiculous. He points out that the dragon lost a subordinate, while Cheongsan has lost its legendary hero sword. Master Yukguan explains the deal the girl has proposed, an offer to cooperate and force the demon sword to abandon its current master. He admits he wants to accept, as its power is too valuable to lose. He hopes that a Cheongsan monk will be chosen as the next wielder, and he asks Yang Soyu what he thinks of the situation. Yang Soyu closes his eyes, asking if the master is really worried. About such a simple problem, much to the old monk's surprise. He explains that the demon sword chooses its master based on its own preferences. A very specific type. Someone pitiful yet innocent, small but agile with a hidden darkness. In short, he declares, the sword is looking for a young girl. In other words, he declares, the sword has a very specific and very problematic preference. An accusation that leaves Master Yukguan sputtering with rage on the floor. But Yang Soyu is already vowing to get the legendary weapon back. Elsewhere, the sword's new owner sits quietly in a courtyard with another woman. The woman turns, surprised to see Yang Soyu approaching them. He's arrived with his own entourage, a truly bizarre collection of masters. The woman can only stare, completely taken aback by the sight. Yang Soyu points, demanding the demon sword pay attention to him. He then presents his secret weapon, a hooded figure stepping forward. A figure who reveals herself to be a young girl, Cheongsan's proof of sincerity, diplomacy at its finest. The girl strikes a pose, a picture of feline perfection. She even offers a quiet meow for good measure. But the blindfolded girl is completely unmoved by the display. She declares that this candidate is way off the mark. Yang Soyu panics, revealing he hid the real candidate all along. He lists off the sword's preferred qualities, a petite build, a youthful appearance, and even the perfect hair. He shoves forward his true secret weapon, a second candidate, and the demon sword immediately reacts with a flash of light. But the second candidate erupts in a fit of pure rage, vowing to kill the girl. She screams that Astrid is dead, struggling against Yang Soyu's grip. She laments that a true talent was lost, while she was left behind, and she blames the blindfolded girl for her friend's death. Another woman appears, telling the girl to calm down. She introduces herself as Nanju, assuring them her barrier will hold. Yang Soyu explains that she's a subordinate from their department. He notes that the enraged girl also has a restraint-type skill. He asks Nanju to comfort her, explaining her recent instability. But the girl turns on Yang Soyu, demanding they kill the wielder and take the sword now. But Yang Soyu explains that it's not that simple. The enemy already has their information and has taken out 2 monks. He says they must feign cooperation to avoid more attacks, but she can only stare back, her face a mask of fury. Yang Soyu lets out a long, exasperated sigh, a master of de-escalation. He tells her she wouldn't stand a chance if she attacked now. He urges her to endure, just like everyone else is. He tells her that if she wants revenge, she should help the monastery. He reminds her that the sword prefers a more pitiful type, and that her current expression is anything but. She tells him that no matter who he is, he should show respect to a fellow monk. But her resolve hardens as she vows to get revenge for Astrid. She clutches a string of red beads, a silent promise. Yang Soyu can only look on, completely confused by her outburst. With her warning delivered, she turns away from him and walks off down the long corridor, leaving him behind. He watches her go, the weight of her words hanging in the air. His expression is unreadable as he processes the encounter. But from above, someone has been watching the entire scene unfold. Master Yukwan appears, a decisive look on his face as he agrees to a deal. He explains that they don't know how to force the sword to change its master, but internally, he admits that stalling for time isn't a bad idea. It's an opportunity to extract whatever information they can. However, the blindfolded girl is not so easily fooled. She claims to know of a method hidden within Chiongan, a place she calls Noah's Library. The name clearly catches the old monk by surprise. A library left by Noah Evans, one of the original 9 masters. A repository said to contain every book in the world. The ultimate collection of knowledge, from ancient to modern times. She explains the library's ancient books hold the key to their problem. The demon sword pulses with a menacing red light in her hand. A wave of green energy erupts, sending the monks reeling. She calmly states she'll be watching to ensure they cooperate. The monks are left frustrated, realizing how much she knows about them. But Yang Soyu seems to find the whole situation rather interesting. And Nanju, despite her tough act, is secretly thrilled to visit the legendary library. The story then explains the nature of this special place. It's a dream world, a special space created by Master Yukwan himself. A place that perfectly reproduces the memories and knowledge of anyone he's made a contract with. Yang Soyu reflects on his long and arduous training, a path guided by Cheongsan's most outstanding figures. He remembers one of his hooded masters, Noah Evans, a man who presented him with mountains of books to study, forcing him to learn this world's entire history, geography, and even its ancient languages. He'd only ever seen a fraction of the collection in his dreams, and was always curious about the real thing. And now he finally has a chance to visit the legendary library. The scene shifts to Sungjin, who sits quietly in a room. Kara asks him if Yang Soyu has been busy these days. He explains that all the monks who can read ancient languages are currently occupied. She offers Sungjin a spoonful of food with a cheerful smile, but he's less than thrilled by the pile of wild vegetables. Kara insists they're healthy, boasting about her countryside expertise. A close-up reveals a meal that only a mother could love. She then announces she's found a volunteer to help him get out more. Sungjin can only look on, completely confused by the offer. And in the library, Yang Soyu looks up from his studies with the same expression. The two counterparts face off, a tense energy crackling between them. A small girl with white hair then appears, carrying another mountain of books. A delivery that startles Yang Soyu, who is clearly not enjoying his study session. He looks up from his book, startled by the sudden interruption. Sungjin flinches, wondering what just scared him so badly. The two counterparts stare at each other as the girl tries to stifle a laugh. And Sungjin responds with a swift kick because that's how adults solve problems. He storms off in a huff, clearly done with the study session. The scene shifts to a massive complex on the outskirts of the city. A sprawling site that is the physical location of Noah's library. Though normally restricted, it now houses 100 monks who can read ancient texts. They've all been assigned to the eastern section, searching for clues about the demon sword. But finding the right information is a monumental task, a desperate search for a single answer. But as they work, Yang Soyu observes the sword's new master. He notices she's not just a silent, menacing figure. In fact, she has a surprisingly childish side. But he soon learns that the demon sword itself is quite the conversationalist. It offers a running commentary, a scathing critique of its own master's fashion sense. The constant chatter even begins to annoy the other monks. The sword then delivers a very direct personal message, a message that leaves Yang Soyu completely bewildered. He can't believe the sword is calling him out for being dirty, and the girl takes the sword's command a little too literally. The girl is given a full spa treatment by Nanju, a task that Nanju seems to find incredibly tedious. She watches the girl, a thoughtful look on her face. But she's more than happy to hand her off to Yang Soyu. And our boy gets a brilliant, if not slightly unhinged idea. He gives the girl a complete makeover from head to toe, a result he seems incredibly proud of. He fusses over her hair, admiring his own handiwork. Declaring that he has achieved perfect symmetry, he finishes the look with a bit of hairspray, much to her delight, a style he seems to have a very specific and very personal appreciation for. The two of them take a break from their research, sharing a meal on the library floor. The study session continues, with the girl now balancing a tower of books on her head. Eventually, the long hours take their toll, and the girl falls asleep on the floor. But his quiet study is interrupted by a familiar voice, and he turns to see who it is. It's Sunjin, looking much healthier than the last time they saw each other. His expression is calm, though the ordeal has clearly left its mark. Yang Soyu notes his quick recovery and asks if he's returning to the house. But Sungjin simply looks away, avoiding the question. He lets out a quiet scoff before turning to leave, clearly not interested in small talk. He claims he was just asking to mentally prepare for seeing Yang Soyu at home. Yang Soyu can only sigh, clearly annoyed by the entire interaction. The blindfolded girl asks if the two of them aren't on good terms. He sarcastically insists they're incredibly close, a bond forged in mutual annoyance. She then asks who he actually gets along with, and he retorts, asking if she plans to kill them too. The conversation grinds to a very awkward halt, but then Yang Soyu's expression shifts, a sudden thought occurring to him. He asks her to ask the demon sword about the darkness in Chaeyoung's heart. The girl listens for a moment, her expression unreadable. She relays the sword's answer. It's a secret between the two of them. The answer only seems to amuse Yang Soyu, who lets out a small laugh. He returns to his book, the two of them sitting in a comfortable silence. The moment triggers a memory from his past, a time when he and a blue-haired master soared through the city skies. She had asked him a simple question back then. If he had to choose between the demon sword and the red crow. He explains his reasoning. The red crow was far too cruel. But she countered, questioning the demon sword's preference for children with darkness in their hearts, a question that she then turned directly on him. She had simply called it a secret, a promise she'd keep if he ever came to her world. The memory fades, leaving Yang Soyu with his books. A month has passed in their search for an answer. The entire library complex is dedicated to the task, and after weeks of searching, the monks are growing weary. But Yang Soyu continues his work, undeterred. He remembers the long hours spent with his master, poring over ancient texts just like this one. His focus remains unbroken, his resolve as sharp as ever. He loses himself in the text, his consciousness diving into a new world, a state of perfect immersion where only he and the words exist. And after weeks of searching, he finally finds it. The way to change the demon sword's owner. He presents his findings to the other monks who have all gathered. Master Yukwan notes that despite 100 monks working, he was the one who found it. The old master looks on, genuinely impressed by the boy's ability. And Yang Soyu, ever the humble one, is more than happy to accept the compliment. The blindfolded girl asks him what the ancient text says. He's surprised to learn that she can't even read it herself. She explains that she was told she was a hasty, ugly creation. Yang Soyu asks if the dragon was the one who said that. He immediately refutes the claim, insisting that she's actually very cute. In fact, he argues the demon sword has only made her cuter. The other masters all seem to agree, calling her the best. Yang Soyu catches his breath as the girl quietly accepts the compliment. She seems to ponder his words, a thoughtful look on her face. She then asks him to explain what he found in the ancient text. He begins his explanation, speaking of the sword's core principle. He reveals that the book tells the story of the demon sword's very essence. He explains the world's fundamental laws, truth, error, and skill. These are the basic principles of their world, and there are legendary tools that embody these principles, like the trident, a treasure once wielded by a sea god, and the demon sword, a weapon created to punish errors. He explains that no matter its preferences, the sword's core purpose remains the same. If its owner ever goes against that purpose, the sword must abandon them. He smiles, explaining that even the most difficult problems can be solved if you just know the right method. He explains that knowledge is the ultimate weapon, a powerful strength left to him by his master, Noah Evans, and he's clearly very proud of the results. He lays out the simple solution. The owner must go against the truth. All she has to do is try to slash a virtuous monk, and her ownership will be revoked. The blindfolded girl seems to consider this simple plan. Her expression shifts with a dawning realization. She draws the sword and asks which of the panicking monks she should cut down. But her target isn't a person at all. It's a 500-year-old sacred statue from a famous temple. A 500-year-old statue weathered by time. Yang Soyu explains it's probably more virtuous than most monks anyway. The blindfolded girl considers her target, sword in hand. Her bandaged feet take a slow, deliberate step forward. But as she looks at the statue, a new thought emerges. Yang Soyu explains the library was funded by a wealthy businessman, a major sponsor whose grandson is currently undergoing surgery, a risky heart transplant from Jong Winam, one of the Grave Hunt rookies. The girl listens, her expression unreadable behind the blindfold. She turns back to the statue with a small, knowing smile. But Yang Soyu just smiles, saying he was only kidding. He then casually gestures for her to proceed with the plan. The girl draws the gleaming demon sword and brings it down in a swift, decisive arc. The ancient statue's head is cleanly severed, but instead of leaving her, the sword erupts in a blinding golden light. The resulting shockwave sends the other monks flying. A massive wave of energy tears through the library, bursting from the very top of the skyscraper. But in his prayer room, Master Yukwan seems completely unaware of the chaos. Master Yukwan stares at the empty stand in his prayer room, but a familiar golden energy begins to swirl in its place. He gets a report that the sword has returned to its position. The other monks let out a collective sigh of relief. But his relief is cut short by a single, chilling command: attack. A new group of monks suddenly charges toward them. The blindfolded girl's eyes glow as a dark power erupts. She floats into the air, unleashing a wave of red energy. A massive defensive shield immediately forms to counter her. A barrier of light expands to protect the entire city. With the sword gone, the girl unleashes her true, unrestrained power. The headless master declares they can't let her escape so easily. An elder monk screams out, identifying her as an error. The girl's challenge seems directed at the masters themselves. But then, her colleague makes his grand entrance on a massive beast. He strikes a pose, announcing his arrival like a true prince. The monstrous creature roars, tearing through the city streets. Its attack sends the controlled monks flying through the air. But a new figure is already moving to intercept them, soaring through the air at an incredible speed. She soars high above the city, planning to escape to the sky. But a voice calls out, and a new figure appears before her. It's Yang Soyu, somehow keeping pace with her in the air. His expression is one of pure, stunned determination. She can only ask how he managed to follow her up here. He reaches out a hand, his intent clear. The sight leaves her completely stunned. He kneels on a cloud of red smoke, a power she doesn't recognize. His eyes flash with a familiar, dangerous red light. And from a window below, another figure watches the impossible event unfold. A memory surfaces of a hooded figure named Aya, and the legendary power she wielded, the Red Crow, a power he now realizes Cheongsan has been hiding all along. An explanation of the two legendary entities of the old special unit, Chaeyoung's demon sword and Aya's Red Crow, a power that dwells in mythical smoke, obeying its master's will, a parasitic skill that bonds with its chosen wielder. But after its previous owner, Aya, was killed in battle, the Red Crow vanished, believed to be lost forever. But it seems the crow chose its new master long before the demon sword ever did. A flashback reveals the masters had been waiting for this moment. The Red Crow itself speaks, having longed for its new master to take to the sky. It roars with triumph, ready to fly free once more. The blindfolded girl is sent tumbling backward from the sudden power. She demands to know how he has this skill, but he simply says it isn't his. He cheerfully explains that he just borrowed it. The girl unleashes her own deadly attack, the full bloom of 100 flowers. But Yang Soyu easily dodges the storm of razor-sharp petals. He dives down toward her, summoning a familiar golden weapon. His eyes gleam as he prepares to strike with the legendary trident. He dives down with the golden staff, unleashing a powerful blast of pure energy, but she calmly deflects the attack with ease, and counters with a volley of her own projectiles. She realizes her opponent can now move freely in the air, a type of combat Yang Soyu is completely unfamiliar with. The girl panics, overwhelmed by a power she never expected. Yang Soyu is hit, his mind racing to find a way to dodge. He's sent reeling backward, completely caught off guard, and is struck by a powerful blow from an unseen attacker. He hangs upside down, laughing off the near-fatal fall. But his attention is caught by something streaking past him. With a grin, he decides to give chase. The Red Crow lets out a cry, ready for the hunt. But they're not chasing the girl anymore. It's a familiar supersonic creature from the second test, a lonely single love bird who has just met its match. And for the creature, it's love at first flight. The bird swoops in, offering him a ride on its back, and Yang Soyu eagerly accepts his new feathered steed. She asks if he's not afraid of falling to his death. But Yang Soyu just erupts into a fit of hysterical laughter. He screams back that he's not scared at all. His complete lack of fear seems to amuse her. He swings the trident, sending another blast of energy her way. Her eyes flash with a sudden intense power. A new energy begins to gather around her. She raises her hat, forming a defensive barrier. but she's stunned by the force of the blow. Her attention is drawn to a glowing symbol on a rooftop below. A master on the ground clicks his tongue in annoyance. As the girl is forced to deflect a barrage of attacks, she realizes she's been lured down to a lower altitude. A master asks if this was all part of Yang Soyu's plan. As a coordinated assault unfolds between the skyscrapers, the masters split into attack and restraint roles, and Songjin prepares to unleash her own restraint skill. She calls out, activating her fiery trap ability. The blindfolded girl is caught, sent tumbling through the air, just as a massive stone fist descends from above. A barrier of green light, a forest of energy forms around her, but the combined assault shatters the defense in an instant. Nanju screams in frustration, insisting that wasn't her best effort. She explains to the others that her barrier was far from its peak, but the blindfolded girl calmly states that her own power is enough, because all she needed was a moment, which Yang Soyu now has. He grips the trident, his eyes fixed on his airborne target.